Hello and welcome to the Swim Brief. What an episode we have for you today. Really excited. We're going back, at least for one time, to a three-person podcast. And that's because, well, the third person that I'll introduce here in a second is the one who came up with the topic. And then he demanded that he be included. But first, as I am almost always joined by Joel Rawlings. How are you, Joel?
I'm great. And actually, even before first should be, don't we have a sponsor?
No, thank you. This is the weekly moment where, you tell me to do mention our sponsor. So, the Swim Brief is brought to you by Pro Swim Workouts. And this is very apropos for our topic today because I think a lot of people out there, right, you get down to sitting around writing a workout and, you're just not really feeling it and you're having trouble. Maybe if you're Trevor, you're going to go into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to come up with a workout for you. But you could also go to Pro Swim Workouts. And you can find inspiration there, solve a problem in a workout that you haven't yet. It's a great resource for that. It has sessions organized by type of team, developmental level, type of workout, equipment needed, and the course. So you can always find something that suits your needs. And more than anything, I love having them as a sponsor. Nico Messer, the man behind it, has been a guest on this podcast. If you've been listening for a long time, you've probably heard him before. He's a coach. He's into this stuff. He's probably very into what we're going to be talking about today. Just an overall great guy. And right now, Swim Brief listeners can get a discount on a Pro Swim Workouts membership with code CD Swim Coach. And if you do so, you end up supporting this podcast. And that's great because I hope you guys like listening to this podcast. We've grown in listenership a lot. And it'd be great if you could do that and support us as well. Now, I'm going to try to introduce our second guest whose face appears to be totally frozen, or he's just sitting perfectly like a statue. From the West Coast, Trevor Gray. Trevor, are you there?
Chris, I am here. Yeah. Everyone's coming in loud and clear on my end, so we're all good over here.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, listen. I have you guys both on because we got to talk about the really important topic of the week, which is that I did a swim meet last Sunday, and you guys are both helping me with my swimming. That's what we're going to talk about, right? My swim meet.
That's right. All about you, Chris.
That's what the listeners want to hear. You want to hear about my 50 breaststroke from my master's meet. Just like do a full breakdown. You ready, Joel?
Yeah.
My yard.
Let's go. Fired up.
I love the just resignation in your voice. No, actually, we're here because, and I referenced this in the ad read. Trevor's been texting me for weeks, sending me questions that he asked ChatGPT, and he started to have the existential dread that in 4 years, this AI will replace a lot of what we do as a swim coach. And so if you're similarly anxious to Trevor and you listen to this podcast, I have no idea what everybody's about to say. So you're either going to feel a lot better or you're going to feel a lot worse when you're done listening to it. But Trevor, why don't you lead off? Tell me what you've been doing playing around with AIs and, how close are we to living the plot of Terminator?
Well, let's first define what ChatGPT is first, because quite a few people still don't know about it. So,
sure, including me.
I'm on Mashable here. ChatGPT is an AI language model developed by the company OpenAI, and is capable of generating human-like text based on the input it's given. It's trained on a large corpus of text data and can generate responses to questions, summarize long text, write stories, and much more. It's often used in conversation AI applications to simulate human-like conversations with users. And it came out in November or December of last year, 2022.
Yep.
And so if you just Google, there's thousands of articles already written about it. And on one hand, I saw a story. Someone put in, please write a story in the tone of the King James Bible on how I put a peanut butter sandwich in my VCR. And it was really funny. I'm like, okay, this is harmless. But then it's like, copywriters are going to lose jobs, because why don't you just put the text into ChatGPT and that they can edit my story? And so a lot of people are worried that they're going to lose their jobs. And then so I'm like, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to write a swim workout, which I did this week. And hopefully none of my swimmers are going to listen to this. I don't think it'll be uploaded anytime soon. But
you delivered that workout.
I'm doing it tonight. I got 2 workouts on the board, one generated by me and one generated by ChatGPT. I'm going to see which one they choose.
And this is the one you sent me, right, in our text message.
I had to modify my input, my text into it a little bit to get what I wanted. But on the 5th try or 6th try, I'm like, this is pretty good. I'm gonna give them this workout, see what happens.
Yeah, and just remind for everybody, like, what was the prompt in the end that you ended up giving to this AI to get it to write you a swim workout?
So my team needs some serious work on their underwater. So I said, let's do a 15-minute warm-up, 90-minute total workout with a 15-minute warm-up. Main set 1, focusing on underwater dolphin kicking. Main set 2, focusing on power and efficiency, or I wrote something like that, and a 5-minute cool down. And I had to modify each keyword you got to be pretty specific, and then it pumped out a 90-minute set.
Yeah, and I've seen it. Like, it's a legitimate swim workout, and if I'm not too lazy when I'm done recording this podcast, I will find a way to, attach a version of what I've seen, like that it spit back in this workout. But it did spit out what looked like a legitimate swim workout. If you had told me it was written by a real person, I wouldn't have blinked an eye. And I guess before I go to Joel, like, what's your basic premise here, Trevor? Are you actually worried that this technology is going to displace swim coaches in some way?
That is one scenario. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen in 4 or 5 years, but 10 years, maybe. We got cameras on pool deck. Let's just feed the camera into ChatGPT. Let's feed it data like the Aura Ring here. So you could upload all the biometrics that my Aura Ring is taking, including heart rate variability and heart rate and body temperature and all those metrics. You upload how you actually did in the workout, and it will spit out the perfect workout for you the next day based on your biometrics. And then you got cameras on the pool deck, upload that to ChatGPT or whatever version will be in the future, and it'll say, hey, you're crossing over on your right arm. Stop doing that. And where's the place for the coach then?
All right, Joel, what do you think? Are you filled with existential dread about robots replacing us?
At first I was thinking 4 years would be too long, but then I figured, like, a week. If there's any money in swimming, next week we'd have AI programs already hooked up to Aura Rings or the Tritonware or whatever. If there was money in it, we'd already be doing it. Well, it'll take 4 years, but as Trevor said, 10 years. Would be most swim coaches all of a sudden would get scientific data and be like, that's ridiculous. Because back in 1984, I did 18,400 IMs all out on 6 minutes. So this is ridiculous. There's no way we do an easy workout like this. So that's why it would take 10 years, is basically for us dinosaurs like myself to die out so that real data could come in and fill in. The trouble I think, and I've heard people talking about AI just for, like, with writing and things, and the problem is there's already racism, generated within AI. There's already gender bias already within it, and so it's going to keep on perpetuating that. And so what I was thinking in regards to, like, swim coaching, because if we're just talking raw numbers, it'd be really easy to start to compile all the workouts that are done, and the problem with that would be the bias that's already been incorporated into workouts from coaches in the past, but eventually that would right itself. As more data is accumulated, those data points become extraneous. They get weeded out, and so you start to find those things. But again, you bring in whatever it is, like your Whoop band, your Aura Wear, whatever it is, and it's going to be able to calculate, again, your readiness to be able to go. It can give you probably instant time feedback. If that goes right back into the computer, again, you can basically start to determine just with a couple simple questions. Like an athlete gets to practice, they answer like a 10-question set. That'll kind of determine their emotional readiness. It'll determine their physical readiness. And then you get in, you go, you can measure heart rates, everything right there, real-time data. And you could actually not just have a workout ready, but a workout that would actually change the moment they step on the pool deck. So I think the coach's job is going to be more of kind of what it should be. Like you're a cheerleader. You're there just to welcome the kid in and, let him feel comfortable, have someone to kind of talk to. But we're more going to need a lot more sports psychology and positive psychology courses than physiology courses, because that's all stuff that really is pretty easy. Because if you look at, I remember when I first started writing workouts, USA Swimming had their progression thing, or like Dr. Sokolovas came in, he's like, let's go like this many yards of aerobic, this kind of interval, okay? 10 100s, rest 10 seconds after each, I can figure that out. And so I think, again, the individualization will be nice, because as we've set up the economic structure for swimming is we have to have a team of 50 with one coach anyway to get a paycheck. Might as well individualize it with a computer.
Well, I've heard both you guys, and I have to say from the outset, I, for one, welcome our future robot overlords. Okay. Mainly because, again, if you've been listening to the ad copy from this practice, probably my least favorite part of coaching is coming up with what to do at practice. So, Trevor, if you're telling me we're only, moments away from a AI being able to make really good practices for me, I am thrilled. I am really excited. And I guess that's a segue for me to make a couple points about my basic view of this technology. And one is, I think you guys both hit this on the head, that, this technology is really, like, the most optimistic view is it's going to be a huge asset to coaches. Like the scenarios that you both played out, I know they can be anxiety inducing for a lot of people, that like, oh my gosh, like, is all this judgment going to be taken out of my hands? Or maybe an AI is going to actually help you extend your ability to process the giant amounts of data that might be available to you as a coach in the future, right? Like we can only process so much of that data on our own. And I think it's a big challenge right now, even like if you look at some of these heavily sort of data infused coaching models, whether it be, some of that stuff that came out of Eastern Europe, the super system coaching, that race pace stuff, USRPT, probably one of the biggest challenges is just handling all that data and making a judgment about what to do next. And then when you expand it to something like, like you said, like an Aura Ring, like a device that's going to be tracking all sorts of bio data while you're competing. Well, like if you didn't basically have some form of intelligence, some form of computer to help you process all that stuff, you'd be totally hopelessly lost. You would never, ever actually coach as a coach while you're trying to process all that stuff in the background. So one really optimistic way to view it is we could be looking at a future where, we get a lot of help. And then the last piece of this, and I think you hinted at this as well, Joel, which is why I guess I'm, for the most part, just feeling really optimistic about this, is I do think when I look at applications like this, and of course you say like it's looking like closer and closer that it could, for instance, write a swim practice, and maybe somewhere in the near future it could, take in some of this data about how somebody's doing and write the ideal swim practice. I don't think that is as much of a limiting factor on how people do in swimming right now as maybe some of us imagine it is. Like I often think about a lot of these, again, the Eastern European based super systems coached by numbers is sort of one of the ways I've heard it described, or USRPT. Like a lot of these training systems, they're excellent on paper, they are really ideal training. And if you sort of follow them right, it can be pretty close to the ideal thing for a person to do. But it's one thing to have ideal training on paper, and it's a completely different skill to get somebody to do it. Like the problem that we have in a lot of coaching situations is not that we don't know what to do. It's that we can't figure out how to motivate human beings to do what's best for them in a lot of situations. So, coaches at their core, I think hopefully if you think about yourself, you're looking at your most important skill. And I would say it's not your knowledge of training or how to write the perfect practice. It's actually your ability to get people to do the thing that would be best for them in a situation. And I think this model, like this AI, as far as I can see from every piece of breathless coverage I've seen in it recent, it's nowhere near replacing some of that and some of the psychosocial, emotional pieces of coaching. So I say, bring it on. I can't wait.
Okay,
I'll go back to Trevor now.
What about those coaches who don't have any psychological skills or motivational skills, and they are great at writing practice? Like some coaches are going to have to adapt, right?
Do you really think there's a lot of people like that out there, though? Like I think we're like imagining like it's an unrealistic scenario, and maybe this is where I am much less cynical than I maintain. Joel teases me about this all the time. Maybe this is where
you're a closet optimist, and you're just afraid.
Yeah, where I'm a closet optimist, but I just don't think that there's a lot of coaches out there that are just like kind of robots that, the whole basis of why they're good is because they make good workouts.
I don't know. I think your position of bias from your training makes it easier to say that.
Yeah.
Because you have all the skills, you have all the tools to do these things, and most coaches do not. I mean, this is why you're selling product, to bring us up to your level, so to speak.
Well, thanks for the free plug for my stuff. I guess I would say I will admit this piece. And that is, people who listen to this podcast have heard me say a lot of times, like, I do think that broadly, if you look at the collective knowledge of coaches, I think that because we've focused on it really hard and we've spent a lot of time discussing it, we've just spent a lot of collective brain power, swimming as a sport overall is actually pretty advanced in the way that we design training. Like the collective knowledge level is pretty high. And I know there's people listening to that going like, yeah, tell that to my, club coach who's still making me do 18,400 IMs because in 1986, as Joel said it, Billy Conlon made junior nationals doing that. And by God, you're going to do it too. I know, but I would say even those practices are a lot closer to the ideal than we probably want to admit. So I don't know. I think that maybe if this forces some of that adaptation, I think that would be a great thing for swimming. Again, I've twisted it back into a positive. Joel, you're welcome to jump in and completely shit on my parade if you want to. But
what I was thinking is growing up in the tundra like I did, there's a lot of areas out there where there's very good athletes and very good athletes that want to swim. And they don't have access to a coach like that. Again, like we always hear stories of like Dagny Knudsen, all the things that she would do just to be able to swim. And all of a sudden you can get a lot of like basically expert, training, expert, physiology, expert everything online and at a cheap rate. I mean, if we're able to sit here like being weekend warriors with an Aura ring or a Whoop band, imagine what someone with national caliber athlete. It's not going to have to like leave home to go somewhere else to train now. They can train at home. They can get what they need. And I think part of the motivation will also be in that, obviously I don't want to rule everything out of personal interaction, but part of motivation is like, this is exactly what you need. It's scientifically backed. This is, and so there's that belief versus sometimes where it's like, why are we doing this? Like, you really want to look it up? Just hit that blue link and you got like 18 different references to the scientific articles as to why this set is going to be beneficial. And so for some kids, that's highly motivating. the kids that are not going to be motivated by that, yeah, they probably aren't going to be motivated by a lot of things other than their mom dropping them off, and that's about it. And so we all have those kids, but those really high-end kids, it'd be nice again that they have that option. Or if we hear all the time like high school teams where they couldn't find a coach. Here's someone basically you just need someone that's going to be a good person, just kind of in there and help to organize things and structure the lanes so that people can do it. I mean, the biggest thing I've seen for writing workouts is that you're overwhelmed by the numbers and you only have 6 lanes. And so now you've got to basically, like, I've used the analogy before, it'd be like if you're buying T-shirts for the team, everyone gets a medium, because then maybe it's going to fit more people than not. And so when you have 6 lanes, you have a max of 6 training structures set up. And so that's always been the limiting factor, is the facility. And so if all of a sudden someone's able to do some training on their own or with a partner or something like that, I think it opens up a lot of options. So now I'm being the optimist on that end, I guess. But I definitely think it can open things up just as much as do some negative.
Okay, well, what are some of the negatives? Because I'm actually with you guys, and I think this will make coaching a lot easier, and that we will be able to focus our efforts and our skill sets in other areas of improving these swimmers, besides just writing a detailed workout that'll take sometimes an hour or so, and we could be using that time elsewhere. So what are some of the negatives of this?
I got one right away that I did just came up as I was going all the, because we're all like tunnel visioning on the coach and the athletes. Okay, how about this? This information is going to be accessible pretty much to everybody. So I want you to imagine the most over-involved parent of swimmer that you've ever coached that is going to now be all over you going, this is what the AI spit out as the perfect workout, and why aren't you having my kid do this? Because you're probably still going to end up in scenarios where you go like, yes, I know that, Chat GPT tells me that this is the ideal workout for today, but I'm going to use my judgment in this instance because I'm still a human being. And, I just think kid had a tough day today, and I'm not going to push him that hard. Or I don't know, what the scenario is, but it doesn't matter. You're going to have moments where you use your judgment, and you're going to have somebody on the other end being like, well, but look, this, the AI said you should do this workout. Why aren't you doing it? What's wrong with you? What's your problem?
It would be from the athlete's perspective. So you kind of talked about the parent over involvement, but from the athlete, especially I was thinking some of these pro swimmers, it'd be so nice to be able to have this kind of data available. But one thing I've seen is I had one of those Whoop bands for a little while, is I started kind of leaving kind of my relying more on what the band was telling me than what I was kind of telling myself, which is a good thing, obviously, to prevent overtraining. But it was kind of I was going off of that to kind of gauge how hard I was working, rather than kind of that internal, this is hard, and kind of staying within that moment of what fatigue level is and things. And so it started becoming more of an external, I don't really know how to phrase it in such a way, but it's I started relying on that more for my abilities. I see it says, not enough sleep, not really going to get a great workout. And so my mindset already going in was, it's not going to be a great workout. And so, as a parent, you're this is my workout. I've got 1 hour right now. That's it. And so it started being kind of a limiting factor in some regards too, because I already had that excuse of well, it wasn't going to be a great workout anyway. And so even though my 100% was only going to be a 50% max anything, it was I was already going at 98% to give that 50%. It's I think you can focus so much on the extraneous that you kind of lose kind of the whole thing about sport of being that internal, not psychological motivation, but internal feelings that you have of understanding your pace, understanding these things. You're always I see triathletes all the time in pools where they're before they even get a breath already hitting their pace. Where did I go exactly? Versus the kind of the old school thing of you just kind of develop that feel for a pace, and that I thought was kind of a cool thing about the sport, is that you start to go, okay, I know what a 00 feels like, I know what a 58 feels like, or whatever. Versus I've got to look at this watch, and so the same with the heart rate. I kind of know I'm at a 180 heart rate. oh, my watch says I'm 176, and so I think it might. Again, I'm all for it, but I'm kind of grasping at like some of the possible negatives down the road.
I think there's a great point there that like no system is infallible, right? And so as much as we may have something that is, processing more data and giving us a more educated guess than we've ever gotten, it's not going to be spitting out certitudes about exactly what you should do. So you can become over reliant on it, right? Because if you go like, well, this thing is, I don't know, you're going to come up with some percentage in your mind. It's right 90% of the time, but you might get into a situation where you just trust it 100% of the time, and 10% of the time you're dead wrong, right? And that has a lot of problems with it, right? That will bring up issues for you as you're going forward. It may be an improvement because just relying on your own judgment to process all sorts of information about what to do next may be way less accurate than 90%, right? That's probably true for most of us, but it still has its own limitations. What do you say, Trevor?
Well, what I'm hearing here is that you will always need human-to-human interaction, and that no AI, no matter how advanced, in 50, 100 years can ever replace the human interaction. Because remember the lesson from the movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman? Your DNA
I never saw that one.
Don't
you
leave
should watch
hairs
it.
around.
Yeah, don't leave.
Is that? Oh, that's
Your
how we're going with this? Okay, sorry, my bad.
The moral of the story is your DNA cannot dictate what you can and can't do. And it's that human spirit which will dictate, and that human drive and motivation which will dictate what you can and can't do. And I'm sure maybe AI can interact with and interface with that somehow. But until then, when we say, hey, you know what, AI does say this workout, but you know what, let's go ahead and do 10-400 IMs today. Because the AI, notice that the AI algorithm did not pump out 10-400 IMs on my generated set here. Why not? So it will take us to intervene. And in fact, Joel, OpenAI does say that. Say, hey, this system is not perfect. It's not meant to replace humans, and we still need that human interaction in order to make this work fully.
And if you read the sentence a little farther, then in parentheses, it's yet.
Yeah, it does say that. Mm-hmm.
Your time is about to come. I was also thinking one of the limitations, or not limitations, is kind of like what Trevor's and you were saying, Chris, is the idea of the social interaction and accountability. I mean, you look at like the propagation of like CrossFit and all these other things. Whatever version of Fight Club people are going off to, after they're done dropping their kids off at soccer, you need accountability. You need that kind of group where you feel more accountable to it, to getting to, And I think, again, if all you're doing is relying on yourself and whatever the computer generated is doing, it's not enough accountability. I mean, there's 1 in a million might be able to use that, but the majority of people that are trying to get better at the sport, obviously, especially, there's going to be days where you just need something to kind of push you a little bit more to get there, or especially at the beginning stages. And I think that's also, I think as a caveat, we're talking about is more of like the higher end athletes here for AI, not so much like 8 and under swimming. I mean, that's a whole different animal as far as what they should be getting out of the sport and out of a swim practice.
I did just imagine a really funny scenario. That's why I'm grinning over here as we keep on using the example of repeat 400 IMs as the coach, the workout the coach would come up with instead of the AI. But what if like the AI just started going, actually the way to be fastest at swimming is to do as many repeat 400 IMs as you can possibly do. Like how crestfallen everybody would be like, oh, we finally achieved the singularity with workouts. And guess what? We're all just doing 400 IMs, as many as you can every day, as often as you can.
And then the AI ends with work works.
Right. The AI starts taunting you. Like you go like, no more 400 IMs. It goes #work works. And then it just shows you a picture of a cackling Mike Murray on the other side.
I was also thinking, like, part of what it could be, like we've talked about, just the internal physiology that can obviously be referenced quickly by a computer upload. But also, I was kind of reading that Swimming World article about like mathematics in Virginia swimming, how they're bringing in a lot more things where they can kind of measure drag based off of the body lines and things like that. And so again, just having instant velocity access, and again, it's one of those things where it's becoming cheaper and cheaper to be able to get something like that. Those are so many things that you can add into this. It really has unlimited potential. I think to summarize kind of what we've been talking about, the limiting potential is, again, that need for some human interaction, the need for accountability, the need for, someone like the pep talk, the motivation and things like that. But I think, again, I guess when I'm trying to pretend to be the optimist that Chris really is down deep, is that idea that the coach is actually going to kind of be elevated to a much higher thing, because it's not about just the training. It's going to be about the motivation. It's about creating that environment that people want to be a part of, the accountability. So all those higher level things that we kind of hold as, like, when you think back to your favorite coach, your favorite instructor, favorite teacher, those ideals that we start to see more of. Because again, I remember in the 80s, there would be a handful of coaches that would preach about how they've got the workout, they've got the taper, this is what's going to be magic, you need to come with me, and kind of create their own little cult of a swim team, versus everyone has the training, everyone has this. What we need is someone that's going to be able to, get us to want to be here, get us to want to achieve more, get us to want to, again, when you boil swimming down, it's a pretty funny sport. Just a bunch of people trying not to drown faster than everyone else trying not to drown. I like to step back and look at the absurdity of swimming every now and then, and I think it helps kind of balance things out. And I think, again, someone that can make that worthwhile, whatever their goal is to pursue and to chase after, those coaches I think are going to become more and more valuable versus the one who can, I wrote this set for this person back in '88. Obviously, this will work for you now. I'm kind of a coach.
Yeah, I think the scenario, like the optimistic scenario you keep painting, like I would be so excited to live in a world where an AI would figure out roughly like what kind of workouts people should be administering, and then lots of high school teams just hired some guy or woman who was really good at interacting with kids, and kids were looking forward to seeing it, and it created a nice environment for them to do the practice in. Like, gosh, that would be so good for the sport of swimming if that was the case. Like if you sort of eliminated this barrier for entry into swim coaching that was like, well, you must learn, the deep magic that Dick Schulberg first administered in 1968. And then when you master that, then you will be given, the Jedi robe, and you can walk on the pool deck and administer these workouts. Like, to eliminate that barrier of entry. I mean, I've always talked a lot about this on this podcast about Dirk Marshall and bridge bats down in Houston, Texas. And I thought one of the most brilliant things he did was essentially he would hire people all the time to coach swimming on his team that had never coached, like never swam and never coached a swim practice before. And he would hire them as coaches on his team, because he said, like, my number one qualification is, can you create a positive environment for kids? And if you can do that, I can teach you all the rest. Like you just stand next to me on the pool deck. I'll get you up to speed on like what the workout should look like. But so often, like we're doing it in the other direction, right? Where we're deciding like we need somebody who really knows swimming, who knows, the technique, knows how to write the workout. And then we'll figure out if, anybody can stand to be around them later.
Or
that'll be a secondary
I made the
consideration.
Olympic team, therefore I could coach. So hire me.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Trevor's bitter about that because he was so close to making the Olympic team, but like he can't say that, so it's hurting him coaching wise. He was a lot faster than Joel and I.
Coaching in a small town is the same thing. There wasn't going to be a swimming professional. There weren't even going to be former swimmers around. They moved away. And so the best hires I ever had was a woman that she taught elementary school physical education. It was the best coach I ever had. And
right.
What I think about with AI is like I said earlier, is there's going to be bias intrinsic in AI. But there's bias in every one of us, especially like when you're under the gun, you've got parents upset about something, you've got a kid who's, locked himself in the bathroom, whatever it might be. everything else then starts, you're spinning all these plates. You're gonna go back to your bias. Like, I need a set, I need a kick set, 1050s, whatever it is. You're going to spit out whatever your own bias is too. You're going to reference back to your own. And so again, having just even at the very base level of having a catalog available of different things to be able to do. Because anytime I listen to podcasts, I'm always like, I'm the one coach that doesn't want to hear the swim sets, because I'm like, I can write a swim set. I want to deal with how to deal with these crises and these parents and these things that come up, because those are the things that aren't in a textbook, and those are the things that aren't going to be in an AI program. It's again, handling crisis, spinning plates, and smiling the whole time, because you just got to make sure, like, stay calm, all's fine, we're okay here, kind of thing. And
right.
Yeah, I definitely think that, again, it's your ability to communicate is obviously going to be the key for everything, and having a background like this is going to be even better, because it's going to help us get beyond our own biases and what worked for us. It's like we lose a little of empathy, I think, based on that, because it's like, well, I really did this well. So much like the old adage that if you have a college team of men, then you're like, go in the weight room, do whatever you want. Everyone's lined up behind the bench press. It's like everyone's going to go with what they want or what they feel worked for them, and no one's going to be doing lower abs.
Right. All right. I think we've talked a lot of this through. I'm going to give Trevor the final word, and then I'm going to bring us to the finish of this. Trevor, you got any last thoughts about AI and swimming and coaching?
My takeaway is that the human element will become even more important, and
right.
It should allow us, this new tool should allow us to not have to spend so much time writing workouts, and instead working on our ability to connect with humans and motivate them. That's my takeaway here.
Yeah. But hopefully we will use this new tool for good. Although we have a lot of recent history of developing new tools and using them somehow to torture ourselves, like I'm immediately thinking of that, in terms of smartphones. We're like, oh, look, we put all of human knowledge in a handheld device, and we use it to make ourselves miserable all day. But hey, everything will be fine. Just listen to the rest of this podcast. Don't listen to that last little snippy comment that I made. Okay. I want to say thank you to everybody for listening. I want to say also, as referenced in this podcast, on Monday, I started advertising my first ever online course in positive psychology for coaches. Already had some people sign up. It's been awesome. There is limited space for that. The course starts in March. I've discounted it to $210. If you go to Chris D Coach, my website, you'll see positive psychology education as a tab on the top menu. You can navigate right there. You can read all about the course. You can check my social medias, Instagram, Chris D _coach, Facebook, CD swim coaching. And you'll read all about it there. You'll get plenty of information. It'll be in line with a lot of the stuff we discuss on this podcast, but it's something I've been working on for a long time. I'm really proud. I'm really excited to do it. And thank you to everybody that's shown interest so far. Pro Swim Workouts, CD Swim Coach is the promo code. As AI is not quite ready to help us write workouts, why don't you rely on some workouts written by other people that have uploaded them and submitted them and given you information to put it into the context that you were using. And I'm very curious to hear from Nico Messer too, because he's actually got a computer science background. So he probably knows more about this topic than all three of us combined. And I know he listens to all of these. So Nico, maybe you're my guest next week, depending on how much you have to say about this. Thank you to everybody for listening. This podcast is uploaded to Spotify, Apple Podcast. It's also on YouTube. Yes, I know the YouTube presentation is not very dynamic. It's just three talking heads, but it does give you the opportunity to interact. And we always love when people interact, except when they're Romanian and they're mad at Joel, then we don't. But thank you to everybody. Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Joel. And I'll talk to you guys again in a week.
Thank you.